The server room of Iron Gate Systems always smelled like burnt dust and bad decisions. Ozone, hot plastic, recycled air that had gone through too many lawyers. For 10 years, that smell had been my perfume. While executives upstairs argued about fonts on slide decks and pretended sparkling water was a personality, I lived 3 floors below ground, keeping their fragile empire from catching fire in a way that involved federal indictments. My name is Riley Chen. Official title: Senior Security Architect for Special Contracts. Real title: Digital Janitor for Classified Infrastructure. If a packet twitched where it should not, I knew. If someone sneezed near a restricted subnet in Poland, I felt it in my spine. I kept the data clean so the government auditors would not turn this entire campus into a cautionary training video. It was a Tuesday when the axe fell. Tuesday is a cowardly day for disaster. Too far from Monday to blame the weekend, too far from Friday to drink about it. I was buried in a deep dive on an odd pattern in the anomaly logs, chasing a ghost that smelled like a staged fishing test, when my phone buzzed. Message from Human Resources. Please report to Conference 12. Bring your badge. Nothing good starts with bring your badge. It is corporate for bend over. Conference 12 sat on the 21st floor, all glass walls and fake plants. The air conditioning was set to morgue. At the head of the table sat Blake Turner, our new chief financial officer. Blake looked like he had been 3D printed from a stock photo engine called Generic Executive Version 5. 2 white teeth, hair that defied gravity and ethics, and a watch that could pay off my student loans. Riley, he said, leaning back like a king about to grant a peasant mercy. Thank you for coming up. Translation: You did not have a choice. We have been reviewing operational spend, especially in information security, he continued, sliding a folder toward me with manicured fingers. Your role is, frankly, extremely premium. In this economy, we have to be leaner, more flexible. The board wants a strategic transformation. Strategic transformation, I repeated. The words tasted like diet mayonnaise. You mean cheaper? His smile widened into something that belonged on a shark. More efficient. We have contracted Sentinel Shield Global, world-class managed security, around the clock, offshore, agile, automated. They can cover everything you do with a team and an artificial intelligence platform. I looked at him. Really looked. I searched for any hint that he understood what we actually handled down here. The encrypted logistics feeds for a joint task force, the emergency coordination channels for a disaster response program, things that made real planes and real trucks move in real space. Do these world-class partners hold national clearances? I asked. Do they know the handshake sequence for the Atlas uplink, the physical challenge routine, the timing drift tolerances? Because if they do not, you are not just cutting costs. You are flirting with prison. He laughed, a light, indulgent laugh, as if I had told him that numbers had feelings. You security people are so dramatic, Blake said. At the end of the day, it is just data, ones and zeros. Sentinel Shield has an ISO certificate and a very impressive brochure. Let the adults worry about risk. By the way, if hearing a man dismiss 10 years of your work as just ones and zeros makes you want to flip a mahogany table, feel free to hit that subscribe and like button. It keeps my blood pressure medicine funded. I stood there for a long moment, rage coiled in my chest like a heating element. I wanted to explain that one of those feeds controlled emergency evacuation routes for military families. I wanted to ask him how he would feel if his bonus spreadsheet went missing in an airstrike that never should have happened. Instead, a calm settled over me. Cold, smooth, heavy. The feeling of a storm deciding where to land. All right, I said. You are the boss, Blake. Lean and flexible. I understand. I unclipped my badge and set it on the table. Then I reached into my pocket and placed a small metal token beside it. The master hardware key for the Atlas core. It landed with a soft, final tap. I assume your new team is ready to handle the midnight synchronization with the federal relay, I asked. They have been fully briefed, he said, already checking his watch. You can collect your personal items. Security will disable your access by close of business. Human Resources will send the severance documents. I walked out. No slamming doors, no dramatic speeches. I picked up the photo of my younger brother, my chipped ceramic coffee mug, and the stress ball shaped like a rocket that had survived 3 acquisitions. I left the handwritten notes taped near the old firewall. I left the run book I had written over 6 years of late nights and near misses. Because here is the thing about fully briefed vendors hired by people like Blake. They know what is in the slide deck. They do not know the ghosts in the wiring. And they really do not know what happens if the Atlas core does not see a very specific signal from a very specific key at exactly midnight. That part lived in my head. And they had just fired my head. My apartment felt wrong when I walked in that night. Too quiet, too clean, like someone had put my life in read-only mode. I tossed the cardboard box of desk debris on the kitchen table, kicked off my boots, and stared at the blank television screen until my own reflection annoyed me. Then I did what any responsible cybersecurity professional would do on the day of a career execution. I went to the liquor store and bought the expensive bourbon I usually only touched after successful audits. I was not unemployed, I decided. I was prematurely retired by an idiot. There was a difference. By 11:45, I was on my couch, laptop closed, lights dim, glass in hand. In my world, you develop a sense for systems, like an extra nerve that hums when a data center spins up or a circuit decides to die. I could feel the building from 10 miles away. The cooling arrays would be winding up for the nightly sync. The Atlas core would be waiting patiently for the heartbeat from my token. My token that now sat on a conference table, next to a security badge that would not open a supply closet. My personal phone lay on the coffee table. It did not care that Human Resources had marched me out. When I built the catastrophic alert tree years ago, I hard-coded my number as the final fallback. I meant to remove it. I really did. But then layoffs and deadlines and one stubborn supervisor kept getting in the way. At midnight on the dot, the screen lit up. Alert. Unknown administrative source attempting connection to Atlas core. I did not pick up. I just watched the messages stack. Alert. Invalid handshake pattern detected. Alert. Invalid handshake pattern detected. Alert. Source continues attempts. A slow smile tugged at my mouth. Not happy. Not kind. The smile of someone who has just watched the first domino tip over. There you are, I thought. Blake and his agile army. Because of course they were trying to come in through the general gateway. Through the front door that leads to unclassified reporting dashboards. Not through the hardened tunnel that uses a dedicated modem and a custom signaling routine we built with a government liaison over lukewarm coffee and several lawyers. Trying to reach the Atlas core that way was like trying to open a bank vault with a library card. Another alert appeared. Unauthorized entity in restricted segment. Initiating Guardian Tier 1. My chest tightened. Guardian was my ugly little masterpiece. A rule set designed for the day someone stupid or malicious tried exactly this. Tier 1 was warning level. Snapshot of the IP, immediate throttling, quiet log entries. If a sane person had been in charge, this is when they would have called me, or at least someone who knew how to form the phrase escalation path. No sane person was in charge. They kept pushing. You can tell a lot about a vendor from the way they break things. The unknown IP tried again with slightly adjusted parameters. Wrong again. Then someone tried a direct port probe. It was clumsy, the digital equivalent of jabbing a keypad with every finger at once. Alert. Port scan detected in classified enclave. Elevating to Guardian Tier 2. Tier 2 did not simply block requests. It created a file. It geolocated the source network, cross-checked threat feeds, and engaged the pleasant government compliance module whose license key Blake had once called paranoia on a balance sheet. I poured another drink. The bourbon burned less this time. The next alert was different. External oversight relay contacted. Status flag Amber 4. Amber 4 was federal for something feels wrong in a building that should never feel wrong. A quiet ping to a monitoring office in Virginia, where a night shift analyst would see a tiny square on a large wall turn from green to simmering orange. If you are waiting for the part where I rush in and save everyone, you may need a different channel. At that moment, I set the phone face down on the table. Not my problem, I said to the empty room. Silence settled over the apartment, dense and heavy. The compulsion to fix the mess clawed at the back of my mind. This system was my work, my code, my choices. The catastrophe building under Blake's feet had my fingerprints all over it. I lasted 20 minutes. At 1:30 in the morning, I walked into a 24-hour diner called The Comet. It smelled like fryer grease, old coffee, and broken New Year resolutions. Perfect. I took a booth, ordered black coffee and a wedge of pie whose age might qualify it for Social Security, and opened my laptop. Blake had revoked my domain account. The managed security vendor had disabled my remote tunnel. They thought I was gone. Unfortunately for them, nobody had ever bothered to take over the little forgotten island that was the building physical security network. The badge readers, the cheap cameras, the motion sensors for the cleaning staff. All of that ran on a legacy subnet that the facilities manager refused to let anyone modernize. I had admin on that. No one remembered. A few keystrokes later, a grid of low-resolution camera feeds filled my screen. Empty cubicles, dark hallways, vending machines, a lobby aquarium full of depressed fish. And then camera 6, the core room. The status lights on the racks were pulsing frantic red and amber, like a Christmas tree wired by someone with a nervous breakdown. On camera 3, a workstation in the operations pit lit up. A mouse cursor jittered across the screen. Someone, somewhere across the planet, was trying very hard to look like they knew what they were doing. They did not. On the grainy feed from the operations pit, windows opened and closed in clumsy succession. Command prompts flashed for a second, then vanished. Network settings appeared. Someone was changing domain name server entries by guesswork. I stared at the screen and whispered into my chipped coffee mug, "Please do not." Changing core DNS values inside a secured enclave is like swapping street signs during a fire evacuation. The traffic does not just slow down. It goes somewhere it was never meant to go, and someone notices. The waitress shuffled over, a woman in a faded band tee with a name tag that said Rita. She refilled my coffee without asking. "That your boyfriend on there?" she rasped, nodding at the laptop. "More like a very dumb ex," I said. "He is about to learn a life lesson." "Hope he deserves it," she replied. "Eat your pie." On camera 6, the server room lights changed. The status strips went from flickering to solid red. The fans were still moving, but the pattern had changed. They were no longer breathing with the data flow. They were fighting heat. Lockdown. Guardian Tier 3. Tier 3 was harsh. It sliced the core away from the outside world. It sealed internal pathways. It treated every new request as hostile until proven otherwise. It was the digital equivalent of dropping blast doors and shouting good luck. On my phone, which I had finally turned screen up, a new alert appeared. Heat threshold rising in Atlas core. Ventilation restricted by lockdown. When the system locked to Tier 3, it also clamped down on all non-essential airflow in that room. You cannot put out a digital fire with oxygen. The problem, of course, is that silicon cooks. I watched the temperature reading in the corner of the feed tick upward. 74, 79, 83. Somewhere in the building, a security guard noticed something. On camera 1, old Henry from the front desk leaned toward his controls, squinting. He picked up the wall phone, dialed a number from muscle memory, and waited. My phone began to buzz. I did not answer. It went to voicemail. I could almost hear Henry in my head. "Riley, the lights down there are going wild again and the air feels funny. Maybe call me back." He was a good man. He did not deserve any of this. The people upstairs, on the other hand, had worked hard for what was coming. The temperature reached 85. That triggered the building integration script. Fire suppression teams in the local district received an automated heads-up. The oversight office in Virginia saw the amber block slide toward red. Another message hit my phone. External oversight status escalated to black flag. Federal review pending. Black flag had looked very theoretical the day I wrote it. Something you design because a colonel insists that you list every nightmare. A state where the system assumes the entire building is compromised and outside authority steps in whether management likes it or not. The clock on the wall of the diner hit 4 in the morning. The pie tasted like sugared cardboard. My coffee had cooled into something that might remove rust. I finished both. The temperature in the server room plateaued at 88, just shy of physical damage. They were not entirely incompetent then. Someone had found the breakers for non-essential systems. The camera showed emergency lights only, casting harsh shadows across the racks. My phone buzzed again. New number. Washington, D.C. area code. Text. Riley Chen. This is Agent Patel, Cyber Division. Atlas facility shows black flag status. You are listed as secondary security contact. Please confirm situation. I rested my head against the grimy diner wall and closed my eyes. I could reply. I could say, very sorry, your favorite facility just fired the person who knew which end of a firewall is up. That would feel amazing for about 30 seconds. Then it would feel like I had volunteered for a subpoena. I left the message unanswered. By the time the sun began to smear gray light across the diner windows, my phone held a small library of missed calls and increasingly anxious texts. From security. From numbers I did not recognize. From an email address at the oversight office marked urgent. I walked home as the sky shifted from bruised purple to pale blue, showered, stared at my tired face in the mirror. The phone buzzed again, persistent and shrill. Private number. Higher tier. I let it ring almost to the end, then answered. This is Riley. Ms. Chen, a deep voice said, gravel over steel. This is General Samuel Ruiz, Cyber Defense Command. Do not disconnect this call. That got my attention. I am listening, General. We have an active black flag situation at Iron Gate Systems, Atlas Complex. Your name appears on primary design documents for the Guardian framework. Current management is unable to provide chain of custody, access credentials, or basic status. I require direct clarification. I worked there until yesterday afternoon, I said. The company terminated my position for cost savings. New leadership believed an outsourced provider and automated platform could replace internal security leadership. Silence hummed on the line for a moment. When Ruiz spoke again, his voice had changed from formal patience to something colder. They removed the named architect on an active government contract without a managed transition, he said, while the facility remained connected to federal networks. That is accurate. And now my watch floor has a red indicator that points directly at your former employer. I imagine so. He exhaled slowly, the sound like a jet engine spooling up. Ms. Chen, I am requesting your assistance not as an employee of Iron Gate, but as a cleared citizen and architect of the system currently panicking. Can you reach the site within 30 minutes? I looked out my window toward the industrial park in the distance. I could already picture the flashing lights. Yes, General, I said. I can. Bring government identification, he said. My team will meet you at the perimeter. The line clicked dead. I dressed with careful calculation. Dark jeans, polished boots, a charcoal blazer. Not corporate, not casual. Consultant armor. I tied my hair up, added subtle eyeliner that made me look more awake than I felt, and poured coffee into a travel mug the size of a small fire extinguisher. Then I headed out to collect the debt Blake Turner had just called in without reading the terms. The last kilometer to the Atlas complex looked like the opening shot of a disaster movie. Local police cars blocked the main drive, lights strobing. A fire truck idled nearby, hoses curled and ready. Two black sport utility vehicles with government plates sat at awkward angles near the front doors, like punctuation marks on a bad sentence. An officer in a reflective vest stepped into the lane, palm out. I rolled down my window. "Road is closed, ma'am," he said. "There is an incident at the tech facility." "Riley Chen," I replied. "General Ruiz asked me to report." He frowned, lifted a hand to his earpiece, and murmured into his radio. Someone on the other end clearly said something interesting. His posture changed. "Understood," he said, then stepped back. "Ma'am, proceed to the main entrance. Park anywhere near the front. They are expecting you." Employees clustered in the parking lot behind the tape, clumping together for warmth and gossip. I recognized faces from every useless diversity training and every soul-draining all-hands meeting. The marketing director clutched a tablet like it could protect her from liability. The human resources lead held a folder to her chest. They watched as my old dented car rolled past the barricade. Why is she here? Why are the agents letting her through? Because you made a spreadsheet choice, I thought, and the universe noticed. Two men in dark suits waited under the awning. They moved with the relaxed precision of people who could ruin a life with a memo. "Ms. Chen," the taller one said, "I am Agent Morales. This is Agent Singh. General Ruiz is inside. Please follow us." The glass doors wore yellow tape that read "Federal Investigation. Do not enter." Agent Morales lifted the tape, and I ducked under into my old lobby, which now looked like a crime scene. Uniformed officers photographed everything. Technicians in blue windbreakers labeled cyber response unpacked metal cases and coiled fiber cables. The front desk monitor displayed error messages in loud, accusatory fonts. In the center of it all stood Blake Turner. He looked like someone had dropped him in a spin cycle and forgotten to stop it. His hair was out of place. His expensive shirt clung damply to his back. The perfect tie was crooked. He was talking too fast at a man in fatigues and a starched shirt whose chest glittered with decorations. "It is a false positive," Blake was saying. "We engaged a top-tier security vendor. There is no real threat. We just need someone to reset the alarms." The decorated man did not look at him. His gaze slid past Blake, landing on me as we approached. "General Ruiz," Agent Singh said. "Ms. Chen is here." Blake spun around. His face went through 3 colors in 1 second. "Riley," he gasped. Hope flickered, then fear. "Thank goodness. Tell them it is your system acting up. Tell them you can fix this." I ignored him and extended my hand to the general. "General Ruiz," I said. "Riley Chen, former security architect for Atlas Integration. It is good to meet you in person, although the circumstances are unfortunate." His handshake was firm, grounding. "Ms. Chen, your former employer neglected to mention that they fired the person listed as primary authority on every clearance document," he said, loud enough that several nearby executives flinched. "I had to discover that detail from federal records. Perhaps you can help me understand the current status of my data." "At this moment, General, the Atlas Core is in full Guardian lockdown," I said. "External access is severed. Internal paths are in safe mode. Thermal stress is high but not yet catastrophic. Integrity of stored data is very likely intact. Availability is non-existent." Blake tried to cut in. "We have a managed security team standing by. They are world-class. We simply need to restore power and allow them to complete onboarding." Ruiz finally looked at him, the way one might look at an ant that had learned to scream. "Your managed team attempted unauthorized access using unsecured protocols," the general said. "They triggered a federal alarm designed to detect hostile actors. They then attempted to alter network routing tables within a restricted enclave. At best, this reflects criminal negligence. At worst, it resembles foreign interference." Blake opened his mouth, then shut it again. "The fire department wanted to flood the server room," Ruiz continued, turning back to me. I declined for the moment. "My understanding is that we have approximately 15 minutes before equipment damage begins." "That sounds correct," I said. "I can reverse the environmental lockdown, but I need local console access and my authorization returned." "You have whatever you require," the general said. Your security token seems to have been discarded. Turner. Blake jumped. Where is the hardware key? He swallowed. It was on the conference table, he said. Facilities may have moved it. We had cleaners in last night. Find it, Ruiz said. His voice dropped several degrees. Now. Two agents flanked Blake and guided him toward the elevators with gentle but unavoidable pressure. I went with the general and a small flock of technicians down 2 flights of stairs to the core level. The air in the hallway outside the server room felt like a sauna wrapped in concrete. Heat radiated from the metal door. A rugged console sat on a rolling cart nearby, cable plugged into the emergency maintenance port. The screen displayed a calm, merciless prompt. System halted. Guardian Tier 3. Present token to proceed. I flexed my fingers and began typing. Without the key, I could do very little. With it, I could convince the system to give me a narrow window. A few lines of code later, diagnostic output rolled across the display in a dense shower of hex values and status flags. Core data volumes are sealed but readable, I said. Thermal threshold is approaching danger but not past it. Fans are cycling at limited fallback speed. Footsteps pounded down the stairwell. Blake arrived, breathless, clutching a small metallic fob like a holy relic. I found it in a trash bin near Human Resources, he said, as if that excused anything. Insert it, I said, eyes on the console. His hands shook so hard he missed the port twice. Finally, General Ruiz took the token, slotted it in with one precise motion, and folded his arms. The prompt changed. Welcome, primary token holder. Confirm identity. I entered a passphrase that still lived in muscle memory, then invoked a maintenance override that I had never documented anywhere near management. Guardian, Emergency Environmental Relief Request. Confirm physical presence code. I typed the code from memory. Short, simple. My badge number reversed. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then from beyond the door came the sweetest sound a security architect can hear. Industrial fans roaring back toward full power, air rushing through ducts. The temperature alert on the console began to drop, 1 degree at a time. Ruiz exhaled. So did several technicians. Cooling is stabilizing, I said. We have bought time. Now we need to address the fact that someone tried to add unvetted remote control software to a classified network. On the screen, I pulled up the recent connection log and mirrored it to a nearby monitor so the general could see. A neat table of timestamps, IP addresses, failed authentication attempts, and one particularly ugly line where someone had attempted to install a popular remote assistance tool widely beloved by teenagers and ransomware gangs. Incredible, Ruiz murmured. They used that. Free version, I added, on a system that touches national logistics, from a commercial internet line in another country. The general turned his gaze back toward the stairwell where Blake hovered, pale and sweating. You approved this, Ruiz said. They said it would speed up onboarding, Blake whispered. Everyone uses it. You have taken a high-value federal asset and handed its doors to an unvetted foreign vendor using a consumer tool, Ruiz said. This is not efficiency. This is a case study for prosecutors. Blake sagged against the wall. You wanted to save a line item, I said to him quietly. Instead, you bought yourself a federal investigation. 2 hours later, we sat in Conference 12, the same room where Blake had ended my employment, now repurposed as a tribunal with better coffee. This time I was at the head of the table. General Ruiz occupied the seat at my right, radiating calm fury. Along one side sat the company chief executive, a man named Harrison Cole, who usually spoke in phrases like brand journey and market synergy, now very interested in the texture of the table. Next to him, the head of human resources clutched a notebook like a shield. Blake Turner waited in a corner chair, jacket off, shoulders slumped, a bottle of water dangling from his fingers. Ruiz began. Mr. Cole, he said, let me outline the situation in simple terms. Your company held a contract to host and secure systems that support national logistics. You removed the architect and designated security officer for that contract without notice or transition. You replaced her with an offshore vendor that lacked clearance, used unsecured tools, and directly triggered a federal alarm. Cole nodded rapidly. We recognize that mistakes were made, he said. This restructuring was led by Blake and approved based on incomplete information. It was not incomplete, Ruiz replied. You simply did not understand it. That is not the same thing. He turned to me. Miss Chen, what is the current status of the Atlas core? Data integrity is intact, I said. Guardian successfully isolated all sensitive volumes. Forensic imaging is complete on the connection attempts from the vendor. External access remains disabled until your office grants approval for controlled restoration. Local services are gradually coming back online. In your professional opinion, are there any remaining unauthorized footholds from the vendor activity? In my opinion, no, but my opinion is not enough, I said. We will need a full code review, binary comparison, and a sandbox rebuild. That will take time. Ruiz nodded. Which is why you are now under direct oversight, he said to Cole. Effective immediately, this facility is placed under provisional federal management pending a full audit. No change to infrastructure or staff roles is permitted without written approval. The human resources lead swallowed. General, what does that mean for employment decisions? She asked carefully. It means that any attempt to remove Ms. Chen from her role again without my sign-off will result in an immediate termination of all contracts with your firm, Ruiz said, and possibly the arrival of people who do not have my patience. Cole looked at me now, eyes wide with a mix of fear and calculation. Riley, he said, we are deeply sorry for how this was handled. You have clearly proven your value. We would like to reinstate you with full back pay and a raise. That is very generous, I said, examining a chipped fingernail. However, I am no longer interested in being an internal cost center on a spreadsheet. Cole blinked. What do you mean? I am already engaged as an external consultant, I said, nodding toward General Ruiz. For the duration of this recovery phase, I report to Cyber Defense Command. My rate is triple my former salary, plus hazard differential. I bill by the hour. Cole winced. Of course, he said. We can work with that. One more thing, I added. I require an office that does not share a wall with a humming industrial chiller. I believe the one occupied by Blake Turner has adequate natural light. Heads turned toward Blake. His mouth opened, then shut. Ruiz raised an eyebrow. Consider it done, Cole said quickly. Facilities will make the change today. Ruiz stood. Turner, he said. Agents outside have additional questions regarding your documentation, or lack thereof, around the vendor engagement. You will accompany them. You are not to leave the premises without permission. Blake rose on unsteady legs. As he passed me, he paused. I only wanted to reduce expenses, he murmured. Everybody is cutting back. You succeeded, I said softly. You reduced the expense of pretending you were competent. 2 agents escorted him out. When the door closed, silence settled over the room. Then Cole cleared his throat. Riley, he said. Truly, we did not understand the risk. That is the problem, I replied. You did not understand, and you did not ask. You saw a lower number from a vendor, a shiny brochure, and talked yourself into believing that expertise is interchangeable. I stood. I have work to do. The core is cooling, but every access control list in that building now belongs to me. It will be a long weekend. Anything you need, Cole said. Staff, equipment, coffee. Good coffee, I said. Not the tar from the break room. And when I send a list of roles that must never be outsourced, you will sign it without sending it to Blake Replacement. By noon, the flashing lights outside were gone. Only the dark government vehicles remained. I sat behind the desk in my new corner office, the city spread out in the windows like a circuit board. Blake's nameplate sat on the mahogany surface. I picked up the heavy crystal block, weighed it in my hand, then dropped it neatly into the trash can. The office smelled less like fear already. General Ruiz stopped by the doorway, a folder in his hand. "Here are the formal terms of your engagement," he said. "You are now officially Site Recovery Lead." I took the folder. "Thank you, General." He regarded me for a moment. "You designed a system that treats laziness and arrogance as hostile forces," he said. "You expected someone to push it too far." "I did not know who or when," I answered. "Only that eventually someone would try to save a few dollars by ignoring everything that kept them safe." Ruiz nodded. "Keep the labels off," he said. "This country has enough problems without protected executives." He left. I opened my laptop. Full administrative access stared back at me. The Atlas core humming in stable blue on the status display. The overseas vendor blacklisted across multiple networks as a side effect of a stern conversation from Cyber Defense Command. A notification flickered from internal messaging. It was from Kara in Human Resources. "So glad you are back in charge," she wrote. "Should we post a job listing for a new chief financial officer?" I typed a reply. "No need. Budget oversight for critical systems will route through my office. We are investing in competence." I leaned back in the chair, pulled a fresh coffee to my lips, and allowed myself one long exhale. Revenge, it turned out, did not always require sabotage, or sabotage-shaped theatrics. Sometimes it was as simple as letting a badly designed choice collide with reality, then charging triple your former salary to clean up the rubble. If there is one lesson here, it is this. Never fire the person who knows where the real switches are. Never assume that a cheaper line on a spreadsheet can replace 10 years of quiet avoidance of disaster. And if you enjoyed watching corporate greed run headfirst into federal regulation, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, share this with someone whose manager still believes artificial intelligence can replace the only engineer who knows which server will explode if you reboot at the wrong time. I glanced at the status panel one last time. System state, operational. Current security lead, Chen Riley. Financial flexibility, I whispered, smiling at the screen. Meet reality.